Welcome to the Living Legends segment. I am Fayaz Qureshi. 37 years ago, with his father and brother in tow, he presented financing proposals to banks for a manufacturing venture. None of the banks bought into his vision. They opted to turn to people close to them, and they supported their idea. The firm they created has now become the largest oil processing firm in the region. On the Living Legends tonight, we speak to industrialist Vimal Shah, who is chairman of Bidco Africa. Vimal, welcome. It's an extreme pleasure to have you on the Living Legends segment. You are an absolute legend.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Vimal, let's set the ball rolling. Let's start off with your early life, where you were born, and your educational background.
Well, I was born in Nyeri, and that was in 1960. And of course went to Nyeri Primary School in Nyeri, and then moved on to Nairobi. Went to High Ridge Primary School in Nairobi, and then finished my standard 7, went to Jamhuri High School.
Oh, Jamhuri High School.
Jamhuri High School.
I'm a Jamhuri boy as well.
Great, so you're alumni too.
Yes.
And from there went to Aga Khan High, and then went to USIU in Nairobi, and graduated from USIU Nairobi with a bachelor's degree in business management.
So tell us the transition thereafter now. You're out of university. Your family was in the clothing business at one point. What was the trend then? And I'll link it to another question. What drove your family to get into the detergent and soap enterprise?
So my father was in garment manufacturing and doing garments called Bidco Clothing Factory. And during my university education, I looked at that business and said, what do we do with this business? Where do we take it from here? Because doing my administration, I was doing my studies on it. And, we said this could go backwards from making garments into textiles, weaving textiles, spinning, and then the whole cotton value chain.
And I used to bump into you quite often on Kenyatta Avenue, where I had a shop and you had a shop, Bella Boutique.
Bella Boutique, that's right.
And there was this very young, smart, handsome Vimal Shah in a very exclusive car. You used to have this antique car. I can't forget that car. You were pretty stylish then as well.
It was Citroen, right? So anyway, we had these shops in town, and we had these garment manufacturing firm, and we were looking at going backward from there to textiles. And the textiles value chain goes back to cotton. So charted out, while I was in university, actually at USIU, charted out the whole, game plan of going backwards from cotton farming, going to, lint, weaving, spinning, weaving, and then of course making garments. And having charted that out, did a whole feasibility study on it while at university. Although at the same time I was a salesman for Alico, selling life insurance and telling people that, look.
That's a pretty interesting aspect of your life.
Yeah, so that was while I was at university. So did that as an agent and had your prospecting, and they trained us on how to do it. And the important thing there was, you have 100 prospects and 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, convert. And that taught you how to, adjust to rejection. You got a lot of people saying, I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to talk about life insurance at this stage. So that was an interesting point. But at the same time, on the business side, we put this feasibility study out and crafted a whole story around the value chain, going from garments all the way backwards, and then looking at the whole seed value chain. Because when you do cotton farming, you get the lint, which is the fiber,
right?
But you also get the seeds. And looking at the seeds, we looked at that whole seed value chain. You crush the seed, you get oil, you get animal feeds from it, you get the oil, you refine the oil, and then the byproduct, you can make soap out of it. So having charted all that out, created a whole feasibility study for the thing, and said what do we do as a family? And I think that's the time when my brother also was with me, Tarun, and my father, B.D. Shah. The name Bidco comes from him, apparently.
Oh, I see.
B.D. Shah, so B.D. Company. And it was running since 1970 as a clothing factory. So by doing that, we actually put it out and say, look at this value chain. This garment value chain at that time, right, was going down because of all our cheap imports, and also cotton was not in favor at that time.
A very competitive industry at that point in time.
And the Far East was really competitive in bringing their polyesters and rayons. And people wanted a iron-free fabric, so that was a big thing. But looking at the value chain, looking at this side of the story of seeds. seed crushing and all that consumer product, the products were standardized, right? Number one. Number two, the cycle time for products, because it's not a fashion industry. So in our garments industry, the whole lead time for converting from cash, the cash cycle is 180 days. You make the garment, you make a fashion, you put it out there, people buy it or they don't buy it. If they don't buy it, it's dead.
Yeah, that's the turnaround time.
So the fashion industry has 30 to 40% dead stock because a color doesn't work or a design doesn't work and it's gone. Then you got to sell it at a very fraction of the cost. So big issue. Again, shopkeepers use you as a financier, so you are a banker for all the shops, and that's why we had shops where you saw us there. And I think the issue around the edible oils and crushing was far different because the cycle times are faster. Product is standardized, and of course it's a mass market.
It's a consumer product.
That's right.
So that's how it started.
So that's when we said, okay, let's go with this feasibility study, and then went bank to bank, right? And said, here's my feasibility study, have a look at this. So first thing, they look at you and say, you know, I'm 21 years old, and say, young lad, thank you for putting this up, but what's your experience? And I said, no experience. Have you ever done this before? Never done
Brilliant idea, but nobody to support you.
Good idea, but you've never done this before. And where's your experience? So that's the whole concept, which is what I relate with a lot of young startups today. They have the same problem. People asking them, what's your experience? Have you done this before? And they fail. The point then was, talking to others, they said, look, but you know what? East African Industries is very dominant on this one. And they may kill you. So Unilever may kill you there. And that's stuck in the brain at the back to say, okay.
So you're going against a big giant at that point in time.
Yeah, we were looking at, because there was Kimbo and Cowboy and stuff like that being sold. So we said, okay, let's go against that in terms of processing the same products. And the idea was not accepted by bankers, and there was no funding available for that.
So how do you eventually get the capital to finance your dreams?
So having got rejections again, like my insurance industry, having rejections from a lot of people saying, we can't fund it, we don't have the funds for it, and going to IFC. IFC actually gave us a good idea. One of the heads there, he gave us an idea to say, start small and go one by one, go backwards from the front end, start back, and then go backward linkage. Or start from the first end of farming and then go forward linkages. And
any help from friends and family at that point in time?
So at that point we said, okay, where do we start from? So we said, let's start from the soap side and then go backwards. It was all friends and family, right?
Initially.
Initially they supported us and said, fine, start with it. And a friendly banker, right, who knew my father, and you know, they now run I&M Bank, and Biashara Bank was there.
Of course.
And they helped us in terms of saying, okay, here's some funding. And we got that. We also got
Suresh
IDB.
Shah, right?
Suresh Shah. But we also got IDB, who helped us initially with $1 funding there. And that was the initial phase of starting very small. So we started off very small, and then we wanted to go backwards all the time. And then the story continues, and we started doing that from 1985 onwards.
Now, a very important question. It was difficult to gain access to finance at that point in time. Have things changed now, 37 years later?
Unfortunately, no. Not for startups, not for people who are like going into such areas. And I think for a lot of youth and people who've got new ideas, there's hardly any angel capital or venture capital available in the markets. It's tougher. But there are new startups coming up. There are new venture capitalists coming up.
So how does one start? I'm here with a fresh idea, brilliant idea, but I've got no one to back me.
So
Banks
there are,
don't back you.
yeah.
Maybe organizations like you can create initiatives because you've been through this.
True, but also there are people with capital. Those with capital say, fine, I'll venture into this and create partnerships. So I think this whole idea of saying, I want to do it myself is now a thing of the past. You've got to get people coming together and say, fine, partner with us and share the equity in that.
So at this point in time, there are people who are prepared to back you.
Yes.
If your idea is good, you've got the vision.
Yes, they are.
Which is a good positive.
So there are many people now coming up with venture capital and angel capital and of course private equity who will fund you. But there's a lot of people who will not fund round one or round two. They'll fund it after you're successful. So there are different types of capital available in different areas. And I think this is a venture that's we're entering into. But really, we've got to incubate this. It's not picked up that well. If you go to US, it's a huge market. We don't have that sort of capital available yet.
You think it will happen at certain point in time?
I think we've got to make it happen. We've got to bring those people in and say, fine, here are the ventures, look at this, and capital can be formed. I think today what's happening, everybody's trying to put their capital into the stock market in Kenya, which is a very small market, right? And the capitalization keeps going up, but really this sort of a avenue is possible for people to do it with a venture to say, let's work together, let's incubate them, let's create bankable projects. Our biggest problem with a lot of startups is they don't come up with a bankable project, which it's like it's going to work, and they haven't thought it through to the customer. So if you get that, and then of course the trust of the people. Now out of angel capital is when they actually invest in 100 people, right? Mostly about 4 or 5 or 10 make it. 90 of them don't make it, but they don't mind that money. They don't mind losing that money. That's what angel capital is.
Interesting concept, and I hope it eventually does pick up here, because these new startups could be the drivers of the economy at a certain point in time.
Fayaz, amazing opportunities here for a lot of youth. I know because I relate with them. We had the same problems. But right now the avenue is open. And I think with what's happening going forward, that is one access we need to bring to them, right? And then at the same time, our government has not given any incentives for any startups. Right now they go through a lot of hassles. They've got to go through 10 or 15 licenses to get into startups. It's not yet a startup nation, and we need to really make it that way.
Let's hope there's a change of mindset from the government now.
I think the ideas
the initiative has to come from them as well.
No, I think the ideas are there, the concepts are there. Our biggest problem is just lack of implementation.
Yes, implementation is key. Moving on, going back to you, that was the era of monopolies and price controls. How did you navigate a field that was dominated by East Africa industries at that point in time?
Yes, it was an interesting area because the government was doing price controls, and every time you'd have East African industries going there and putting up prices and saying, this is the price, and then they'd argue with it. So we were a player in the market when we started with our soap plant first, and then we went backward into oil, and of course into refining and all that stuff. So when we did that, we became a player. And therefore we had to go together with East African industries to the government and say, this is what you should do for price controls. And we were advocating for removing of price controls, but really it's like the petroleum thing today, price control. But it's guaranteeing a market, guaranteeing a margin. I wish today we had the same as what petroleum has, because you're guaranteed a margin. Now when they opened the floodgates, then competition came in, and really it changed the whole concept. So at that point it was a tough call, because you had to go and show them your costings and they would give you a margin on that. Today it's competitive. It's like you can lose money, right, if you're not careful, if you're not really on top of your game. So yeah, it's a changed world.
And what was the real breakthrough for Bidco? At what point would you go back in time and say, that was the breakthrough for Bidco?
I think the unique differentiating point for us was even Unilever East Africa Industries at that time was bringing in refined oils and just packing it here. We were bringing in crude oils, and bringing in crude oils, processing it here, complete full value chain. So we had zero wastage, number one. Number two, across the value chain, we had our costs very much in control. And we did Kaizen from then, and to look at what is our cost and where is our competitiveness. We went into plastics straight away. We didn't go into the tins that Kimbo was in. And of course, ultimately, we went for market share and mass market share. So we could create a soap that they didn't have. Our soaps were far better in terms of the bar soaps, and we could do marketing better.
So it was prudent financial management.
Prudent plus also management. I think everything we talk about is management. If you manage it well, you actually look at lean or Kaizen, you can make it work, and of course, faster decision making. So I'll tell you the story there. If they needed to go and put up a fractionation plant, they wouldn't get the access to money as Unilever, because they say, hey, why do that? We could do it straight away, and we went into it. And we went the full value chain. So that way, we had many more products, many more varieties, and we could spin things around much faster. So having faster decision making here helped us a lot. And that's one thing I think a lot of Kenyan startups can really beat the multinationals at that game.
And as you grew, you acquired brands from the competition,
yes.
isn't it?
So
I mean, what's the process of acquiring the soft part of it, meaning the intellectual property around the products and the legal status?
So the global stage was changing. I think Unilever had a new CEO, and he said, we're too big all over the world, and we're not focused. And he said, I want to have 400 brands, grow globally. Each brand would be $1 billion.
Wow.
And therefore, they sold off 4,500 brands across the world. So the brands that were famous here, Kimbo, Cowboy, and Tiger, and we bought them all over, right? So that was the IP we bought. I mean, the same way they sold so many big brands, or not big brands, but smaller brands which were coming up.
Yeah.
And that could give them the mass market. They just gave them up and they sold them. So we bought them. And for us, it was fitting in our strategy.
So that was a very strategic move from your part, wasn't it?
Yes, because we had a very clear-cut goal, right? It was to grab, grow, and sustain #1 market share in the African markets by 2030. At that time, that was the goal. So in 2002, when they came out with this sale that we're selling this, we said, let's go in straight away.
Who was the decision maker at that point in time? Was it you?
It was me and my father and my brother, all three together. In fact, it was a very interesting one because it was done in a room where we had our lawyers, ourselves, all of us, the whole board of Unilever and their lawyers, and it was a lock-in. You couldn't say anything. In 3 days' time, your dinner, lunch, everything in there, you finalize, you come out with a yes or no.
Because these were very strategic decisions which
Very
led to huge success.
Absolutely.
As we reflect back.
Same time, you know, in Unga Group had a new philosophy that Unga Group was, a new CEO comes in there and says, I want to change everything. I want to focus only on milling, become the biggest milling in East Africa. So they said they have Elianto in Nakuru, and they were crushing the byproduct corn germ there, and they said they're selling that off. We said, fine, let's buy it because Elianto was a big brand name. So we acquired the bank. We acquired
Elianto was big.
We acquired that name.
Yes.
We acquired that business.
Yes.
And that also fitted into our strategy.
Yes.
So that gave us...
That was a great acquisition.
That gave us a crushing...
Because you bought a brand.
Bought the brand and the assets because we could now go into crushing, which was our philosophy from day one, to go from soap to oil to crushing to seed farming and then go to cotton. Seed farming.
Progressed right through.
Yes.
Now, getting the firm, you've expanded Bidco Group and now have a footprint in East Africa. Now, how would you compare the business environment in Tanzania and Uganda compared to Kenya? How has the regional integration progressed over the years between the East African community bloc?
I think we've done a lot in East Africa. It's opened up a lot of avenues, but we've been very slow in East Africa. And I think we still have a problem within our own Kenyan, Ugandan, Tanzanian. They still think about protecting their own industries, right? Whereas we should be looking at it from a single destination, single point, and we should be looking at the whole of Africa as our markets. So we're doing well in Uganda right now. Tanzania also has been a basket case for us because it's a problematic area. They actually removed all, they actually added the duties on our raw materials. And therefore the entire industry, not only us, all the other people have stopped manufacturing in Tanzania and they're now importing. So Tanzania has been a big case. Just 3 months ago, they've now changed it to say, fine, we will now move to the East African tariff, so that's happening. Uganda is amazing. I think Uganda is really the biggest winner in East Africa because they ramped up their manufacturing.
When you compare Uganda and Kenya?
I think Kenya is losing it. Uganda is gaining by far, straight away. Because
they're creating an enabling environment?
They're so
investor for all investment, for all businesses?
Investor friendly.
Which is a bit more difficult here?
Uganda is the most investor-friendly country in East Africa. Then I would put Rwanda, and of course Kenya comes third.
Why is that so?
I think our own administration...
Is it rigid rules and regulations which we aren't prepared to change and give that flexibility?
Yeah, we've siloed ourselves so much. The silos in all our governments right now, even right now as we speak, the government is so siloed that everybody speaks a different language. And then everybody's charging different charges and costs and all that stuff. So our competitiveness into East Africa has been eroded today, right? So we're more competitive in Uganda or in Tanzania to be exporting to Kenya. But Kenya's manufacturing costs have gone up, power costs have gone up, the taxes that have gone up, the levies. And I think our tax policy is not pro-manufacturing. It's actually saying, let's all go and milk the cow, whereas we're not expanding ourselves. In agribusiness, I would say we've got a lot more going, but we're not really doing it well. I think our agriculture has been murdered in Kenya, and it's not really growing. It's sad.
supposed to be such a big industry for us.
So I just look at it from a positive angle because I remain optimistic. I think the opportunity for really opening up agribusiness and agriculture in Kenya is big. At the same time, manufacturing, huge opportunities to just make ourselves competitive. And really look at our competitiveness relative to exporting to Uganda, Tanzania. A lot of Ugandan Tanzanians have blocked our exports because they're putting in duties and taxes, and that's where our lobbying has not been strong enough. I think we need to really go that route and say, fine, allow them to export what they're competitive, cheaper at, and we need to export our manufacturing in a bigger way.
That would be highly advantageous if these negotiations could take place.
Kenya has it all. Kenya has the best of manpower. Kenya has the best of caliber. We've also got industries with a lot of capacity here.
Yeah.
Right? We're just not leveraging on that and opening it up. The minute we open it up, in some sectors, I don't have a problem. I think they've opened up already. But in other sectors, we just need to open it up.
But they need to be addressed, isn't it?
Yes, and I think this is where we need to address that. And look, if eggs and milk is cheaper in Uganda, let it flow here, right? And let our products also flow.
Yes.
So that's the problem
Beneficial
we need
to
to
both.
overcome. We need to overcome these issues and look at East Africa as one investment destination.
You need to get rid of the red tape and the bureaucracy, basically.
Absolutely. In fact, the border, I've just been to the border 2 weeks ago at Arusha, and you could see a huge queue of 20 kilometers with lorries just stuck there. They're checking things, right? Whereas, we're East Africa community. We should be automatic.
Should be so much more smoother.
The same thing at Busia borders. Every border, it's getting stuck. And I think this is where really now the East African community and open up, we could do so much more. We can leverage on that.
Manufacturing is an energy-intensive sector, right? Now, how much has the Kenya Association of Manufacturers done to have energy costs come down, be it petroleum, electricity, to make the sector competitive? I know we're going through very difficult times post-COVID. We were barely picking up the pieces. Then came the Ukraine-Russia war, and energy prices soared through the roof. Difficult period of time. How can we address the situation? Having said that, right now, the tussle is going on for the conservative leadership, for the Prime Minister. And between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, they don't seem to have an answer for the energy crisis. Energy prices have gone up by 80% in the last 6 months and are expected to go another 80 to 100% by the end of October. They're estimating the average cost for each household is going to be about £5,500. That's about close to 800,000 shillings per year. So I know it's a global problem. But to be competitive, the manufacturing industry, how do we have a competitive sector in terms of electricity, in terms of fuel?
So that's where we've done a fantastic job of Kenya, right? Kenya is not in the same boat as what UK or Europe is going through right now. 80% of our current power is from renewable sources.
Right.
It's also geothermal and all that stuff. And we have it locally available. So we're not prone to those sort of tariff rates.
Issues.
So we don't have that serious problem.
It's currently there at the mercy of what's happening right now.
So all that gas and whatever's being shut off and for winters, we don't have those problems. We have a lot of geothermal, we have local power. So really, we don't have a problem. We just need to ramp up our solar in a bigger way, solar, wind, renewables, and we've done a lot there. So I don't think there's a big problem there. The earlier ones where we used to burn hydrocarbons, where we used to burn, petroleum oil to produce power, are now dying off. So I think Kenya's done a good job there, except, of course, I think just need to get management. I think management at Kenya Power is also changing. They're bringing down costs. They need to do that further, but we need to really allow a lot more of wheeling down. So if I'm producing cheaper power here in, let's say in Marsabit, I should be able to wheel it down and use it in my factory. And those sort of things that they start doing will still make it.
Have you gone solar?
Yes, we've got solar, we've got biomass. We don't burn any hydrocarbons as Bidco, right? Anywhere, right? And also, we've got solar, we've got our own power being produced through biomass. We've got bamboo farming. We're actually advocating for a lot more of any sort of biomass. We will take it up and burn that and really reduce our carbon footprint. So we've done that already as a company. And I think a lot of people are moving that route. Rooftop solar is another big one.
So that's quite a good cost-effective solution.
Yes, it
and
is.
plus reducing your carbon footprint.
It's amazing. We're on the equator. We've got 12 hours of sun. Right now, for solar, people think that if you've got clouds, it won't come in. It's light that you need, not not
This
directional.
has always been a misconception, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
so
all about heat. It's all about light.
It's
isn't
light.
it?
As long as you've got the light,
Yeah.
you can get solar. And everybody's rooftops should become solar anyway. You just save on that.
This should be encouraged across the board.
I would say it's not about government encouraging it. Just get on with it. Everybody, put up solar across your roofs.
Because
everywhere.
that is your future.
Yes, you'll save a lot. And then go LED bulbs, 90% saving in consumption. So if you reduce the consumption and if you produce from a much cheaper source, hey, you're going to be laughing.
A very critical question. The last few months have seen your sector lobby the central bank on access to foreign currency for your raw materials. What's the status now? What has been going on for the past couple of months? In a nutshell, what is really happening?
I think it's a sorry state of affairs because central bank tries to say, when we speak to central bank says it's the banks that they're holding foreign currency. And the banks tell us we don't have flows of foreign currency. The central bank needs to be able to provide that to us. And the bid-offer spread in the markets, if I have a Bloomberg screen or a Reuters screen, the bid is at 118, 119, and the offer is at different rates. On the screen it's showing at 119, 119.70. But on offer, when I talk to the banks, they offer 125, 123, 127. And those people who are exporters, they're still selling at 119. Of course, in the last 2-3 days, it's just moved up to 121 now on screen. But still, the point is that this market needs to be liberalized. I think central bank needs to work on that quickly. Probably we were told it's pre-election issues around election money laundering or whatever coming through, but that's over now. And I think that's something that where the spread needs to come down. The central bank is the only one, along with the bankers, along with the private sector, who can address this and say, fine.
Because remember, you had to just look at XC and the rate that was indicated there. You know you had to pay about 60, 70 cents more and you'd get access to your dollars. Absolutely. And as long as your documentation was fine, you could get even 10, 20 million dollars. This issue was never there. And this difference between 119 and 125, and exporters being paid 119, so they're pretty annoyed right now that the banks are selling at 125 and we're being paid 119. So they're going to start holding the funds as well. Now it depends how long their holding power is. But what's the solution? You need to either devalue and come to what the current rate is, so the exporters are given what they deserve, and then we go back to what our markets were before, and automatically have the ability. And there's also been a state of panic, isn't it? Because a report I read that a month ago they had 8 billion shillings equivalent of dollars being held in banks, in customer accounts.
I think there's enough dollars in the market. There's enough dollars with central bank. So reserves are not a problem.
But there is a panic. But if you ask the bank, they say, we can't give you more than 20,000. We can't give you more than 30,000. A person like you, an industry that possibly needs $1 million a week, how do you cope with this situation? And how do you address this? Because it's extremely important and crucial. It has to be addressed.
I think it's basically, it's now post-election. And I think that's where the clamor was, that it could be because of that. But now it should be opening up. And I think either it moves right or left, which means either it goes up or it comes down, and then you have liquidity. The biggest problem is liquidity and opening up that market, because if you need the dollars, you're not getting it. What's also happened on our bond, infrastructure bond, the yields have gone up very, very high because the prices went down. Again, political uncertainty. Yeah. So I think this is where we need to bring that stability back to those markets, immediately address that. I think interest rates is another issue that will be addressed or will have to be addressed by the banks, by central bank, and to look at if the interest rates globally have gone up, are we going to increase our interest rates? And that's where, again, it goes back to a government philosophy. So I think immediately next week, when the handing over goes on and whatever happens, we really need to get our hang on what do we do about the exchange rate.
What will happen if the interest rates are raised, the repercussions?
If you raise the interest rates up, right, and you see on treasury bills or
bonds,
it
will help tackle inflation?
It will bring in flows, and those flows will then help to boost up our liquidity sources. So again, a lot of people...
so it's a bitter pill to swallow initially.
It's not an easy one, but it's to do with interest rates, it's to do with the gap in the financing, it's to do with our reserves. It's also got to do with petroleum prices, right? It's our import bill that's gone up. And now from September onwards, it should come down. So I think this is something that can be managed.
But the fuel subsidies are going, right, at the end of September? Yes. Pressure from the IMF?
So government, again, it's got to go back to government philosophy, because when government philosophy is we're not going to spend more, or we're going to borrow more, or what are we going to do? This is where I think that central bank may be looking for a lead from the newly elected government who comes in and really make sure this works well. Because Kenya is one case that really stands out. I mean, we're pro-liberalization, we're open, but really get our handle on this.
But we've got a global economic problem. Our hands will be tied. It's not going to be an easy ride.
It's not. I don't think it's going to be an easy ride for central banks. It's not an easy ride for the world. Relatively speaking, right, we're far better off than a lot of other markets in Africa. So that's the saving grace for us as Kenya. We're not as badly off as other countries. They've done a good job. So far, I would say central bank has done a good job. They've kept it in good condition. The macro, the foreign, what do you call it, the fiscal and the monetary affairs are really well handled. KRA, you saw, had a record collection. I think there's a spending side that's seriously a problem, and our government needs to remove wastage. By wastage, I mean anything that's corrupt, theft, or whatever, right, in government. That needs to be controlled on a massive scale, and this is where I think everybody coming in has got to show their leadership. I think that's happening already. People are saying, we will stop corruption, we will stop X, Y, Z, and that's got to be the call of the day.
Corruption is the main issue, and it needs to be tackled. And let's hope the government that comes into place, that should be top on their priority.
I have no doubt, because I think it's got to be a public call. I think everybody in our public in Kenya has voted for whoever they voted for to say, let's stop this rot, let's stop the wastage, let's make sure we have good stuff going on. I think the spend on infrastructure was amazing. I think our expressways, our highways, our roads across the country, everywhere, it's really done a lot.
It's been pretty impressive.
It is impressive, and I think
the road infrastructure has been absolutely amazing. And this
we've got to thank them. We've got to thank them for everything they've done.
From the airport up to Westlands, 15 minutes.
Go out and see all the other projects that have happened. That area has opened up. But again, infrastructure projects do not get you returns same day, right? It takes 3 to 5 years before everything starts happening. I mean, Thika Road, when it was opened up, right? 5 years later, the entire area is now wealthy. Why? Property prices have gone up by 4 or 5 times. There's development, there's roads happening. There's a lot more activity. The same thing will happen across the country. So I think that's
roads do make a difference.
A huge difference.
Huge difference. Transport.
Huge difference.
You're also involved with the Kenya Daima initiative that you chair. Tell us how this initiative group works, how it appeals to all Kenyans, and without it looking like a campaign outfit.
Kenya Daima is not a campaign outfit. It's actually a movement, initiative, which was started by, in 2012, whereby we didn't want to go back to what happened in 2007, 2008, and proactively, because I was reactive when we did something then, but I think the issue was proactively ensure that we have a peaceful election. Number one. Number two, it was to tell everybody, make them sensitized as to what it is in terms of your responsibility as mwananchi. So we said, nitatenda wajibu wangu. But at the same time, it's a multi-stakeholder, multi-ethnic platform, whereby we've got the religious bodies with us, we've got the civil society with us, we've got the business enterprises with us, we've got the youth enterprises, all the youth groups, including university students, women groups coming together, the media, and also the diplomatic corps coming in. All non-state actors coming together to say, we want a smoother transition, we want responsible government, we want accountability in government, and I think ultimately to say, let's have a peaceful transition. And I think this is something that we can be proud of, that Kenyans, I would say, thank all Kenyans for really...
Oh, Kenyans have really matured.
They've taken responsibility in their own hands.
They were absolutely brilliant.
I mean, I was standing in the voting line for 7 hours, and the patience that everybody had was amazing. It wasn't an uprising, it wasn't shouting. But really, I think across the
Kenyans
country...
need to be applauded.
Applaud the Kenyans for doing that, and really keep on doing that, because even now, with whoever wins or whatever happens, and I think the other thing is, even the leaders who got elected, the best part is they've not gone to the court of street fighting. They've gone to the court of Supreme Court.
No, there's been no incitement to violence.
And once you go to Supreme Court, perfect. It's the best way, because that's where you get a judgment. And look, when you enter a competition, there's always going to be one winner, and there's going to be many
And
people.
you have
who
the
learn.
legal channels.
And that's why using the legal channels, I would applaud them all to say, fine, do that, and it's the best way, right?
Now, most industrialists have a philanthropy story. Tell us about yours in terms of sports, the arts, education, and the community, and also a little bit about you,
So I think-
your hobbies.
Yeah, so, well, me, I'm a soul in this body, right? And I think what I have and what I am is two different things. What I have maybe, you know, got this business, got this thing that's running, and got this whatever recognition, but that's all a byproduct of who I am. I think that's where looking at everybody as being the same, and everybody's a soul. So everybody on planet Earth is a soul. And we're all the same, we're all equals. So I think that's important, number one. Number two, as far as we're concerned, we look at more and more how do we give people the education.
That's a very important assessment that you just stated, that we're all the same,
We are all the same.
irrespective of creed, caste, culture, you know.
That's a deep belief that I have, and I think
You
that's a
poke a pin in
philosophy.
me, it's going to be red blood.
Oh, positive. I'm a universal donor. I can give to anyone. It doesn't matter your religion or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think this is important because you could be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever you are, and you say you're there, we're the same. So even the person on the street, right? I would look at them as the same, as equals.
Yes.
It doesn't matter color, caste, creed, or whatever. And I think all this religion, branding, we brand ourselves with color and tribe. It's all a branding. It's like in our products, we have the same product. I could put different names on the product.
True.
Right? So the same thing. And with that philosophy, we think everybody's an equal. And therefore, once you look at people in the same manner, you become much more humble.
And a little bit about yourself,
Yeah, so,
in terms of your hobbies as such.
yeah, so I love...
There's a rumor that you're a very good singer.
I love singing too, yes. I love listening to music, but I also like to sing. And you know, these days with karaoke and that sort of thing, it's a fantastic thing. I know you're a good singer too.
Yeah, big Elvis fan for
Yeah, I've
God
heard you
knows how many
singing.
years, and I used to also impersonate him. Had my own band. Let's have a few lines from you. Simple, 2 lines.
Oh,
Let people see the other side of Vimal Shah.
you're putting me on call right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, yeah, come on. You know, que sera, sera, right?
Yeah.
Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see.
For us to see.
Que sera, sera. So I think singing is something that really elevates you, and really it's a detox in a way.
It is.
But at the same time, I
It's
think
like a feel-good thing for me. Feel-good
Yeah.
factor.
at the same time I love
Releases
reading.
all the stress and the tension.
Yeah, you can sing away and, you know, sing along. It's therapeutic.
It's very
It
therapeutic.
releases all your tensions and stresses.
Finally, to wind up this great session we've had with you, what would be your message to Kenya as we come to a close to this political season?
I think when we went on the 9th, we went to the polls, we put our name and number to whoever we choose for, and that's it. Once we put it in there, we've done our job. And let all the rest be left by whoever's handling it. I think that's important. At the same time, in the end, why do we have leaders? It is the time for every single person to show their leadership, including people who voted, right? Let's show our leadership to say, where are we going? This Kenya nation building, right? It's not just like a start-stop, and it starts now, in the next 5 years ends. And I think politicians probably look at it from a five-year angle and say, it's the end of my story. We've got a long way to go. And I think this is where, let's build Kenya, because Kenya is amazingly positioned in Africa. We've got everything that we
Very strategically located, isn't it?
Geostrategic location is amazing. We've got access to the ports. We have a centralized position in Africa. We've been liberal. We've had very good administration so far. In fact, we've never defaulted on any of our loans as a country. We've got a lot of pluses, and we shouldn't let that go away, right? And I think this is the time to say, let's build on this with leadership to leapfrog to the latest. Our youth, amazing digital awareness. I think let's just give them the empowerment. Let's start looking at things from a different angle. The ACFTA Africa is opening up for markets. Why are we not looking bigger, right? And we're still stuck in our own county or our own ward, and we're stuck with that. I think leadership, in my opinion, everybody's got a leader. arouse that leader to say, I want to see that in my leader. Now, the people who have won, and 16,000 people stood for elections. 14,000 people didn't make it. They learned what to do better next time. The 1882 who went in there, it's also time for them to show leadership to say, I am now the leader of my ward or my county, and I got to unite everybody together. I'm the MP, I'm the senator, or I'm the governor, and I'm the president of a country. We need to unite, we need to come together and be one country that is solid. Because at the end of the day, we did have a split vote. It was 50-50, whichever way you look at it.
Yes.
0.9, 0.5 doesn't make a difference, but the difference it makes is that we're still one country. We have no plan B. Let's be peaceful, but at the same time, yes, let's get that justice, because our national anthem says it all. Wajibu wangu. And I think wajibu wangu is, what's my responsibility this time? Whoever comes in, is it going to change me? Is it going to change them? But let's hold them responsible. Let's hold them accountable. And let's all start creating scorecards of what you promised and what you're delivering on a day-to-day, weekly, monthly basis, and really start delivering on promises.
Let them be accountable. Let's be optimistic for a peaceful Kenya.
It doesn't matter, seriously, in my opinion, it doesn't matter who comes in. Ultimately, it's, do they have Kenya at their heart? Number one. Number two, are they going to stop that wastage, corruption?
Isn't it very important to have that nationalism, that patriotism?
Yes.
That is very important, isn't it? To feel proud that I'm Kenyan and I need to make a difference. And how do I make a difference? By casting my vote.
Yes.
Because that's what makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I think the important point there is that everybody who casted their votes, and those who didn't cast their vote also cast their vote to say, I don't care who comes in, right? Because then it's apathy, right? The point is, you've cast your vote, let's make sure. I think we have people who want to make a difference. We have people who want to do the right thing. Let's make sure they do the right thing. Let's all help them together and say, fine, let's make sure we do it right. The fears that people have about this will happen, that will happen, is all fears. And I think this is where we got to remove the stereotyping. I would say, like in other countries, you look at, give an amnesty to whatever's happened in the past, but now going forward, there should be no more. If I've got a tank that's leaking, there should be no leakage from the tank anymore, right? If it happened in the past, if it happened in the past and the water's flown, you can't do anything about it.
The past is the past, move forward. And we could speak for hours and hours. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to a real living legend. Thank you so much for being with us on the Living Legend segment. COVID
Thank you very much.
Are over, so we can shake hands.
Yeah, and one thing we say is, mimi ni Mkenya daima, nitatenda wajibu wangu. We need to say it together. Go on. Mimi ni Mkenya daima.
Mimi ni Mkenya daima.
Nitatenda wajibu wangu.
Nitatenda wajibu wangu.
Thank you.
Caught me on the spot there. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a pleasure speaking to Vimal Shah, Chairman of Bidco Africa Group. His insights on manufacturing, public policy, and the vision of a farm-to-fork model are enlightening. We thank Vimal for being our guest on tonight's edition of The Living Legends. Thank you for watching. I am Fayaz Qureshi.